everyone, welcome to Daily Revelations. So we're going to talk a little bit about the timeline in Nehemiah because it makes a really big difference if you understand what's going on and why is Nehemiah doing the things he does. And it makes sense when you fit it into the history of Israel and the exile. So what am I talking about? If you know anything about Old Testament history, the kingdom of Israel, the tribes of Judah, were united all the way through the time of Solomon. Then they divided into two kingdoms, the north, which was called Israel, and the south, which was called Judah. And the two kingdoms ruled separately. Now, the northern kingdom, they sinned, and no one was good. And it's hard to sometimes tell when you read Kings and 1st and 2nd Samuel because it flip-flops between one kingdom and another sometimes when it's referencing, and you have to know which king was in charge and which kingdom they were talking about. But anyways, Judah, on the other hand, they still had the temple. They worshipped where God told them to worship. Remember the tribe of Judah when we talked about in Ruth how God continued the seed through Judah. They worshipped at the temple. Their kings were back and forth. But they still didn't keep the law. And as you found out in your reading today, they got sent into exile for a reason. And so the northern kingdom was actually captured way before the southern kingdom. The Assyrians came in and obliterated them, exiled them, took them away, all that. That happened around 722 BC. Then the southern kingdom was finally captured around 586 BC, but that was by the Babylonians. The Assyrians at that time were losing power, and the Babylonians came in and said, well, we're going to take over. And it was all God's will. God told them, this is what's going to happen if you choose to worship other gods, if you do things and stop worshiping me. It was all written in their books, and they didn't follow it. So, if you want to know where Daniel fits into this whole thing, he was part of one of the first Babylonian exiles in 593. And so there were different phases of exile. Oftentimes they took the people that they thought they could use the most, the wealthy, the fit, and people that they could train to be. Their culture of the Babylonians was we assimilate, we bring you in, we make you part of us, and we're all going to be one big happy family. And so when they brought Daniel in, that was what part of that was, and they were part of the first exiles out of Judah. Then there was a second wave of exiles that came out in 605. That was earlier. Timelines are backwards. But that was the exiles out of Assyria. So the first ones taken out of the southern kingdom was 593. And the exiles then did not return till 538. And that's when we start seeing the book of Ezra coming in and the rebuilding of the temple. Now, the problem was the wall was still broken down, which you found out today. And that is where Nehemiah fits in. Now, where does Esther fit into this whole thing? Well, the book of Esther actually comes before Ezra and Nehemiah. So we got Esther, kind of gives us an idea of what the exiles were dealing with people hating the Jews. And then Ezra came in, was called back by God to rebuild the temple. And then we see the book of Nehemiah coming in. Now, during all of this time of exiles, when you see most of the prophets writing in the Old Testament, which is why they are talking about the things they're talking about, kind of puts that into context too. And finally, the final book in the timeline, as well as in the actual Old Testament, is Malachi. And after Malachi is written, and nobody really knows exactly when. It's kind of guessed between 435 and 415 BC. But then there's this period of silence until Jesus is born. And so I hope that kind of gives you a little idea of where things fall and how all this is going on. So anyways, so we're coming to the very end in the timeline, the Old Testament, and when God is again protecting his city. Now, move ahead. In 70 AD, Jerusalem falls again and is scattered. The temple falls, and as we know, it still sits the same way today. So, anyways, that is kind of a brief history in 5 minutes. So, but I hope that gives you a context of what we're reading about and what's going on in that whole time period, and what God's doing. So, anyways, thanks for joining me on Daily Revelations. I hope you're enjoying your study of Nehemiah and that you learned a little bit about that prayer that he prayed, and just maybe may it encourage you as well to just be praying fervently to God about the things that he lays on your heart as well. So thanks for joining me on Daily Revelations. I'll see you again tomorrow, everybody. Bye.